I've got my Christmas jumper, and so it really is the most wonderful time of the year. In this video, I'm going to be going through all the activities that I've got planned this Christmas with my students. So the first idea I have for you today is from a video about a man on the moon. Now this was a Christmas advert for John Lewis, and every year they release an ad that is based around the Christmas spirit. And in this one, there is a story about a man on the moon. The video shows a girl that lives in a small town celebrating Christmas, and she's looking through a telescope at a man that's all alone on the moon. And what the girl decides to do is to send a Christmas present to the man on the moon to help him celebrate Christmas. Now, the way I use this in class is I get the students to first think about how the man got on the moon in the first place and what's his life like living on the moon. I then get the students to think about what present would they give the man on the moon. In previous lessons, I've also asked the students to write a letter to the man on the moon, asking him all the questions they have that they would ask somebody who's been living on the moon. Sometimes I play the role of the man on the moon and I receive the letters and I come up with imaginative answers to all their questions they have. You could even have this role play between not the teacher and the student, but between two students. You could even conduct this role play not using the teacher, but using one student and having that student come up to the front of the class and declare themselves as the man on the moon, receive the letters and come up with answers to the questions that the students have. An extension to this lesson is having the students imagine that they have to go to the moon and think about all the things they would take. You can even limit it perhaps to 3 things that they would take to the moon. Now, if I was going to the moon, I would take my Christmas jumper, a bottle of water, and some clean underpants. The next activity I'm going to do with my younger learners this Christmas is obviously write a letter to Santa. Where I live in Spain, we're actually going to write a letter to the 3 kings. There are lots of templates online, and when the students have written their letters, I also provide them with envelopes, and we write the address of Santa Claus on the envelope, and I then collect it at the end of the class and tell the students I'm going to send it to Santa. These letters are a great opportunity to use not only the past simple, but also the present perfect, to talk about things that they have done this year that merit a present. So this year, Santa, I've been very good and I've set up a YouTube channel, which everybody loves. So, you should probably give me that new camera and maybe some lights and a new computer. Yeah, just those 3 things. The third activity that I like doing with my students this Christmas is touching on what I mentioned in the previous idea, in that, for example, in Spain, Santa Claus is replaced with the 3 kings. Now, there are lots of other Christmas traditions that are taking place around the world that would be really interesting for you and your students to learn about this Christmas. Now, if you're doing a face-to-face class and the students don't have devices, you could do the research yourself as a teacher and bring that information into the classroom and share it with your students. Perhaps placing around the room some printed excerpts from websites that contain the information about other traditions around the world and get the students to do the research in class. If the students do have devices or you're teaching online, then you could set up a web quest and have the students look for this information during the class. Some really strange and interesting traditions that I found about, for example, was in Japan, where they go to KFC for Christmas. And in Sweden, they build a massive straw goat. And in Norway, they actually celebrate Little Christmas, which is on the 23rd of December. Once the students have found out about all these other traditions, then you can maybe ask them which country they'd like to visit. Once the students have found out about all the traditions, you can get them to talk about which is the strangest, the most interesting, the most peculiar, and even ask the students if they'd like to visit one of these countries to celebrate that tradition. The fourth idea is taking inspiration from Charles Dickens' book, A Christmas Carol. Now, the reason why I like this book and the reason why I use it in my class is that within the book, you have the 3 characters, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. I usually show my students some clips from the film adaptations of the book so they get an idea of what the story is about. And I then get the students to think about, well, remember a Christmas from the past and talk about your experiences on that day. I then think about the present, so the near present, so thinking about the Christmas that is coming up in a month or so. And then I get the students to think about a Christmas in 20 years. What will they be doing? Where will they be living? how will they be celebrated? You could even tie in this activity to the third activity, where you get students thinking about the future, and maybe they're celebrating Christmas in Japan in 20 years' time, and they will be eating KFC. The fifth activity that I love doing at this time of year is telling my students about the fact that the city of Oslo gifts the people of London a Christmas tree every year. This Christmas tree now sits in Trafalgar Square. Now, there is a video that explains the reasons why the people of Oslo give England this Christmas tree, and it originates from the Second World War and the relationship between the two countries during that time. What I get my students to do is to pick a country around the world and think of a gift that their country could give that country, and think of reasons why the gift from their country, in this case where I'm living in Spain, would be useful, would be interesting for another country to receive. I then get the students to pick another country and think about what gift would they like to receive from that country and why. Activity number 6 is an activity that I actually do with my friends and my colleagues, which is Secret Santa. If you're not familiar with this, the way it works is that you put all the students' names in a hat, and the students come up one by one, taking a name and keeping it a secret. They then have to go out and find a gift that suits that person. On the last day of class, all the students come in and give their gifts to each student that they selected out of the hat a few weeks previously. I always ask my students the reasons for buying the certain gifts, because it gives me an insight into the relationships they're building with their fellow classmates. Activity number 7 is a fantastic activity, especially at this time of year. And this is something that I actually do personally and with my family. This is an advent calendar. Now, this is great because, well, we start on the 1st of December and it continues obviously up until Christmas. Most of us are not going to be in class, maybe not every day, and especially not leading up to Christmas. But the way it works is that there is a little door or something to open for each day of the month leading up until Christmas. And usually there is a chocolate behind there. What I do with my students is, instead of chocolate, because chocolate's bad, I usually put some review questions for the language that we've been studying, or the unit in the book, behind each date. If you're really organized, you can get the students to come up now with 23 or 24 odd questions that they'd like to ask the class, and put it behind each date, so that every time you come into class during the month of December, those questions are pulled out from each date and you can ask the class those questions. The 8th activity that I do with my students is also a video very similar to the one we saw in the first activity. This is another Christmas ad from the UK. The name of the ad is Ben and Monty. Now, in the video, Ben is a young boy and Monty is a penguin. Now, I'm not going to tell you what Monty really is, but you have to watch the video and watch it to the end. When I take this video into class, I don't let the students watch it initially. Instead, I get the students to think about predicting what they're going to see in the video. I explain to the students there are 2 friends, one is called Ben, one is called Monty, and that they do everything together. I get the students to think about, well, what do they do together? What do 2 best friends always do together? Get the students to think about their best friend. What do they do together? I then explain to the students that as we get near to Christmas, Monty becomes very sad. And get the students to think about, well, why is Monty sad? In the video, Ben gives Monty a present. Get the students to think about, what present is Ben giving Monty? Once the students have answered all these questions, they've now imagined what the story is going to be about. This is the perfect time now to watch the video. Get the students to compare their answers to the initial questions at the beginning of the class with what happens in the video. Now, I am warning you, it's a kind of a sad video, like the first one. So, you're not allowed to cry though. You're the teacher, remember? Well, that's it. Those are 8 activities that I've got planned for all my classes leading up to Christmas this year. I hope you find them useful and you can use them with your students or perhaps with your school this year. I'll leave a link to all the videos that I've talked about in this video in the description below. And let me know in the comments below if you do decide to use any of these ideas, and tell me how it went, because I am really interested. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.